He's got to call the games. He doesn't know what it's like to just sit back and enjoy some buffalo wings with a football game. He's on the Rude Guest Hotline. Rude, the most reliable heating and air conditioning products in the DMV. Ian, it's Grant and Danny. How are you?
Yeah, I try to avoid dairy on game day. That's right. Phlegmy. It's phlegmy.
It's phlegmy.
Too phlegmy?
Yeah.
I've always said that.
It's very phlegmy.
You are calling the Super Bowl. You are going out there on Friday. Is that about right?
Are you a travel agent?
Yes.
What are we doing here?
Yes.
I'm going out Saturday. I have Knicks Detroit on Friday.
Okay. So if you weren't, here's what I'm getting at. If you weren't calling the game and you just wanted, like you, the family, now with you, the family is, someone else might be calling the game because Noah could be, but you and the wife and everyone's hanging out. Are you're running to the store to grab a couple of things? Like I'm a Coke Zero chips and dip guy. What's on the Iron Eagle hit list?
Yeah, I enjoy buffalo wings. That would have to be up there. I remember one particular Super Bowl where I had gotten back from a net trip and I woke up and I said to my wife, "We need wings." And we couldn't find wings.
Last minute wings.
Simple on Super Bowl Sunday, so we went far and wide, and they were backed up, and it didn't work. I didn't have them by kickoff. It was a whole ordeal. But yeah, I tend to go for the staples. I'm not venturing far off the American way. I'm with society on this.
How often do you get to just feed up, watch the NFL? I guess it's pretty rare, right?
It's got to be the standalone prime timers.
Yeah, you know what's crazy? The years that Noah was in high school, he would tell me about Red Zone, and I'm really not understanding why he was so addicted to it. So he would explain, I like to watch Red Zone, and then maybe I'll have a second screen. I was like, that doesn't sound like the right way to watch football. But I had never experienced it. I did a Saturday night Chargers at San Francisco game on CBS and took the red eye home. It was the first Sunday I had been home since 1998. And Colin Kaepernick was starting. Rivers was on the Chargers. So we're talking a fairly long period ago. Noah was a senior in high school. So I woke up the next day at 11 a.m., Sunday morning, very odd to be home. And I said, look, I'm just going to do what you do. Whatever you do, I'm going to follow you. Whatever your routine is, I'm in. He said, okay. So we sit down. He puts on Red Zone. And at first, I just, again, didn't quite understand why that would be a Sunday setup. And 7 minutes in, I was hooked. It was like crack. I understood everything about it. It just was firing all the synapses. And that was the first time I had ever experienced anything like that. And I get it. I get it now. You just get sucked into the Red Zone abyss.
It's one of the best in the biz, Iron Eagle, chatting with us on Grant and Danny. What do you make of this matchup from a storyline standpoint? A Patriots team that was 80-1. He's got more lives than a cat in this league.
Yeah, quick evaluation. Had New England a couple of times this year, challenging games. They lost to Pittsburgh early. They lost to Buffalo late. So I would tell you I haven't seen them at their best. I know that the naysayers have looked at the schedule and said they hadn't really beaten anybody. And I never blame a team for that. You play who's on your schedule. That's how it works in the NFL. Sometimes you benefit, sometimes you're on the wrong end of that. The Patriots have done everything asked of them to emerge as one of the great stories this year. And Drake May, who was fantastic, prolific in the regular season, we have not seen it sustain here in the postseason. So I do think that has created some doubt around the general NFL fan as to whether or not they can just turn it on offensively against this ferocious Seattle D. What Mike Vrabel has done is a reminder of how far coaching can take you in this league. The right person in that position, the right mentality, the right tone, the right bedside manner, the right buttons being pushed, all of the above. Give credit to Vrabel, to his staff, for the standard that they created for this turnaround, and for the players going out and getting it done. They have new faces. This was not the same exact team that was subpar in 2024. They made changes, but they believed in Drake May. I think that team believes in his leadership. He's very likable. You could tell that defensive players love him, obviously offensive players. So it's a great story. The Seattle story, I just think it starts with Sam Darnold, because everybody has locked in on the idea that Sam's career was resuscitated at different stops along the way. They learned so much at San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, and then he learned so much in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, and so on and so forth. Nobody's really giving Sam credit. He deserves credit. He's handled himself incredibly well. He says all the right things, and I think he means them. Even when he's asked questions, when we've sat down with him, we had him a couple of times last year, had him this year. He just has a real clear understanding of what his journey has been like, and he recognizes that every step has played a role in him getting to this spot. To me, it would be one of the great storylines if he goes out and plays really well and leads the Seahawks to a Super Bowl. But they do rely on their defense. They do rely on their running game with Walker. They're really well coached. Mike McDonald is impressive. You sit down with him. He's incredibly bright, and he was a football outsider. This is not someone that was destined to do this. In fact, he thought team as not just a great story for 2025, but a story that could continue into next season beyond, because they do it the right way.
Ian Eagle with us here on Grant and Danny. Ian, you touched on something about the Patriots I want to double click on. So last year they picked third. This past year they picked fourth, and their pick, Will Campbell, has actually struggled a little bit in these playoffs. You know, a little bit of injury and the like, but it's not like they got this one guy and the renaissance happened. You mentioned this. A lot of teams have had the 31st ranked schedule. A lot of teams haven't gone 17-3 with that 31st ranked schedule after picking third and fourth in consecutive years. What they've done, I think, is even underrated because of that.
I would agree, and I do think when we talk about coaching in the NFL compared to the three other major sports, there is something that needs to be covered in why it matters so much. It's not just the X's and O's. It's not just the strategy on Sunday. It, to me, goes beyond that. I think now more than ever in professional sports, the head coach in the NFL represents their team more than any other in any other sport. They are the face of the organization. They are interviewed the most. They have multiple media sessions. You're seeing them pop up many times during the week. If there's ever an issue with the team, they're the go-to. It's not usually the GM. It's not usually the owner. It's the head coach in the NFL. So I just think Mike Vrabel was the right guy at the right time for the right team. The past, the history, I just believe that they made the decision that they had to make, which not every owner would, by the way. There are a bunch of owners that would not admit a mistake, would not take the hit financially. They would just stick it out with the head coach that they hired and give them a second year and maybe even a third year. But give credit to Robert Kraft and for upper management for making the decision that they made, recognizing that they had to make the move because somebody else was going to take on Mike Vrabel, and that's where he wanted to be.
Not bad for a non-Hall of Fame owner like Robert Kraft.
Yeah, that's the rumor. That whole story has been so intriguing based on the fact that we went into it thinking they both could get in,
right,
and it might create some uncomfortable moments that they're both in the same class, to now what we understand to be the story that neither got in. And it is not like MVP voting and other awards. It is anonymous. So you don't really know, other than a columnist here and there giving their opinion, why somebody said no or why they voted for somebody else. We've already heard the one opinion that, well, there were some other candidates that were going to run out of time, and I just felt it was important to make my vote count for this particular candidate as opposed to not necessarily making a personal distinction on another candidate. But it does feel like the process is quite flawed.
So true story. So I bumped into this guy out and about a couple days ago and immediately could tell he was from Boston. He might as well have been in the town or something, you know? Yeah. He's like, what Mrs. Marshall's trying to say is there's a 44th patient. And I'm talking to this guy and he brings up the Super Bowl, who you rooting for, whatever. I say, you know what's funny? You know, forever, because it got so old, you would find yourself oftentimes, like, I've seen the Patriots parade. I know what that looks like.
Yep.
Let's have Atlanta win one or whatever. I find this team to be very likable, though.
Oh, agreed.
And it's odd because I've never on Super Bowl week gone into the week going, you know, it'd be really cool if they won this one. But you've got this quarterback representing the Jaden Daniels 2024 class and these QBs in their infancy, Vrabel, who got ran out of Tennessee, and then all the way down the list, the reclamation project of Diggs and Matt Collins, who bounces around teams like a pinball. I like this team, and it's weird that I say that about New England during a Super Bowl week.
No, I agree with you. I think they are very affable, and they have not been as out front as maybe some other Patriot teams had been in the past, where those from the outside looking in would jump to the conclusion that I can't root for these guys. They're easily rootable for because they've done it the right way. I don't find them to be overtly cocky or anything like that. It just doesn't have the same feeling as the Belichick-Brady combination that for so many people around the NFL became the evil empire, whether that was just imagined in their mind or it just was built and layered over the years because of so much winning. But, you know, it's funny, that particular year that they won the first Super Bowl, for whatever reason, you know, it's all based on schedule and where they stood in the pecking order and where I was in the pecking order of broadcasters at that point. I ended up having a bunch of Patriot games when Tom Brady first broke in. And I think back on that. How am I the guy? Nobody anticipated it. And he approached the job with a lot of humility, and he had a sense of wonder. And I have to give him a lot of credit because even as the years and all the success that he achieved, he still, at least in the 10, 12, 15-minute sessions that we had later in his career, he treated it in the same manner. And I think that consistency when you were behind the curtain is part of the reason why you had so much respect for him and for what they achieved, and Belichick for that matter, and that they did it with different rosters. It wasn't the same exact roster every time. You know, look at the skill position players that were on those teams. These were not Hall of Famers in the championship years. But, yeah, this team, there is nothing about them that you would say, man, I can't find the good storylines and narratives. They've done it the right way.
It's funny you guys were talking about that just now, because I would sort of say the same thing about this Seattle group. And here's where I'm going with this, Ian. You think back to that excellent run when they won the Super Bowl, then lost one under Pete Carroll, chewing gum at like 7 trillion RPMs, right? I mean, just the Legion of Boom with Sherman and Browner and Maxwell and Earl Thomas and those guys, and Russell Wilson's dating a pop star, and Marshawn Lynch is in Skittles commercials making the Lynch quake and everything else. They're quiet superstars, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I believe has said 14 words this year. You know, like this is not that same group, and here they are dominant. Like they're as good or better than any of those Legion of Boom teams in terms of DVOA and some of the other fancy metric type stuff. And maybe offensively they're even better. It is kind of remarkable, and we don't think of them the same way yet because they don't have that crown jewel of a Super Bowl. But what you guys are talking about with New England, I go, that kind of sounds like Seattle.
Yeah, you know what's pretty wild, and I think often this just happens based on circumstance and based on timing. But when you think of that Seattle run, your first thought is often them blowing the Super Bowl against New England as opposed to winning the Super Bowl against Denver. And it's also how it happened. They blew out Denver. It wasn't even a game. They were just so dominant. It was over early. And you think they're about to win their second, and that's going to be the headline, that they're now the ones that are building a potential dynasty. And often your first thought with Seattle is, oh, yeah, remember Malcolm Butler? Like, that's unfortunate, I'm sure, for people that live in that world day to day. It doesn't take anything away from the championship that they won, and that goes down in history. But I don't feel any real link between that group and this group. It just is different. And I think personnel-wise, they're built differently. Obviously, their head coach is very different. Mike McDonald is very different than Pete Carroll. And Sam Darnold is very different than Russell Wilson. It is a little bit under the radar, even though they won so many games in a row. They were the number one seed going into the NFC. I still believe that there are people out there that aren't quite familiar with who they are and what they're all about, just based on the fact, maybe also it's in the Pacific Northwest, but they haven't gotten the same kind of attention that other teams have gotten at this stage of the season.
And I know you've got a call coming up on Sunday. I'm sure still quite a thrill to be in the booth and on the call of such an amazing game. Crush it, and I look forward to catching up soon.
Appreciate it, guys. If you're going to the Philippines, let me know how the feed sounds.
I will tell you that we have a listener named Shane who is regularly in random places.
Like Shane always calls, but it's Shane in, and then it's fill in the blank. You
a
never
lot
know.
of days it's DC, but then it's the Philippines
Bulgaria,
or Honduras, or they're just random places. So I'm going to tell Shane to get with us to give us an update on how the feed sounded.
Yeah, at some point in the second quarter, 2nd down and 9. Shane, I know you're listening. Here's a throw from Darnold. It's caught. Smith and Jigba working the sideline. Yeah, I'll work Shannon. No problem.
Let's go. Ian, thank you, buddy. Always
Appreciate
fun.
you, bud.
See you guys.
One of the best, Ian Eagle. Love chatting with him